I never thought a simple coffee run would lead to such an unforgettable moment. It all started on a chilly afternoon when I stopped by my favorite cafe. The smell of fresh coffee filled the air, and the soft hum of conversations surrounded me as I waited in line. That's when I noticed him, a frail-looking elderly man, dressed in an old wool coat, standing a few feet ahead. His hands trembled slightly as he counted the change in his palm. His face, lined with years of experience, held a quiet dignity. Behind him stood a teenage girl, maybe 16 or 17, with her arms crossed and an impatient scowl on her face. She wore expensive sneakers and a designer bag slung over her shoulder. I could hear her sigh loudly, shifting from foot to foot. "Hurry up, old man," she muttered under her breath, rolling her eyes. "Some of us have places to be." My heart clenched at her words. The elderly man hesitated for a moment, his fingers faltering over the coins. He didn't look up, but I saw the hurt flash across his face. Before I could say anything, she scoffed and added, "Why do they even let useless old people like you hold up the line? Just move already." The cafe went silent. A few people turned to look, but no one said anything. The old man slowly raised his head and met the girl's glare. But instead of anger, his eyes held something else. Something deep, something that made even me shiver. Then in a calm, steady voice he spoke. And what he said next would change everything. The old man let out a slow breath and looked straight into the girl's eyes. His voice, though soft, carried the weight of something far greater than mere words. "Young lady," he said, his tone even and calm, "I was once like you, full of life, full of confidence. I had no patience for the slow or the weak. I thought time was endless. But life has a way of humbling us." The girl scoffed, shifting uncomfortably. "Whatever. Just move." He didn't flinch. Instead, he gave a small, sad smile. "I fought in a war before you were even born," he continued. "I've seen things no person should ever have to see. I worked for 40 years to build a life for my family. I've buried my friends, my wife, and even my son. And now, I live alone, in a quiet apartment where no one calls or visits." The cafe remained silent. Even the barista had paused, her hand hovering over the espresso machine. The girl's smirk wavered. She blinked, as if unsure how to respond. "But do you know the hardest thing about getting old?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's not the aches or the loneliness. It's the moment you realize that the world has decided you don't matter anymore." Something in his voice cracked, just a little. And in that moment, I saw it. The shift in the girl's expression. The realization. The regret. She opened her mouth as if to say something, but no words came out. And then, the old man did something that caught us all off guard. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a neatly folded piece of paper. And when he handed it to the girl, her face turned pale. The girl hesitated before taking the folded paper from the old man's trembling hands. Her fingers tightened around it as if she wasn't sure whether to open it or throw it away. I could see the conflict in her eyes, pride fighting against curiosity. But something about the man's steady gaze made her look down and carefully unfold the letter. As she read, her face changed. The arrogance disappeared. Her lips parted slightly, her eyes darting across the words. I watched her throat bob as she swallowed hard. Then, without a word, she pressed a hand over her mouth. The silence in the cafe was almost deafening. Even I felt my breath hitch as I watched the scene unfold. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. This is... She stopped, looking at the old man with wide eyes. "Is this real?" He nodded once. She looked back down, her hands shaking now. "What does the letter say?" I found myself asking before I could stop myself. The girl blinked as if snapping out of a trance. Slowly, she turned to me, her voice uneven. "It's a letter from his son," she swallowed. "Written before he passed away." I felt a lump form in my throat. The girl took a shaky breath and continued. "It says, 'Dad, if you're reading this, it means I didn't make it home. But I want you to know you were never useless. You were my hero, the strongest man I've ever known. I only hope I made you proud.'" A tear slipped down the old man's wrinkled cheek. The girl covered her mouth again, her shoulders trembling. And then, before any of us could react, she did something none of us expected. She stepped forward and hugged him. The old man stood there for a moment, frozen, his arms at his sides. It seemed like he wasn't sure what to do. But then, slowly, he returned the hug, his frail arms wrapping around the girl. I could see the way his shoulders trembled, as if the weight of everything he'd been carrying for so long was finally being released. The girl who moments ago had been so harsh and dismissive, now clung to him. Her face pressed against his coat, her breath shaky. I could hear her sobbing softly, the kind of sob that comes from deep inside, the kind that makes you let go of everything you've been holding on to. "I'm so sorry," she whispered through her tears. "I'm so sorry for what I said. I didn't know." The old man said nothing for a long time, just holding her. Finally, he whispered back, his voice soft but full of warmth. "It's never too late to understand, my dear." I stood there, caught in the beauty of the moment. The tension that had been in the air only moments ago was gone, replaced by something that felt like healing. The cafe, once filled with the sounds of coffee cups and chatter, now seemed to hold its breath with us. The girl pulled away slowly, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. She looked up at the old man, who was now smiling faintly, his face softening. "I've been so caught up in my own world, I never thought about how you might feel," she said quietly. "I thought I had everything figured out. But I was wrong." He nodded gently. "We all have our moments. Just remember, you don't have to be like me when you're old. You can be kinder, you can give more, and you can be proud of the love you leave behind." The girl took a deep breath, still wiping at her eyes. "I want to be like your son," she whispered. "I want to make people proud. I don't want to be someone who makes others feel small." For a moment, there was only silence between them, but it was a comfortable silence, filled with understanding. The old man placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're already on the right path, my dear. Just keep walking." She nodded, and for the first time, I saw her smile. A real smile, not the forced one from earlier. As they stood there, sharing this quiet connection, I couldn't help but feel moved. Sometimes it's the smallest actions, the softest words, that can change someone's entire outlook. And as the girl walked out of the cafe, she turned back to the old man and said, "Thank you, you've taught me something today I'll never forget." He nodded once more, a peaceful look on his face. "Take care, young one." And with that, she was gone, leaving the cafe to return to its usual hum of noise and chatter. But something had shifted, something in the air, in the hearts of everyone who witnessed that moment. It was like we had all been reminded of the power of kindness, of understanding, and of the unexpected ways life can bring people together. As I finished my coffee and prepared to leave, I realized that, despite everything, the old man was right. There's never a moment too late to change. A few weeks passed, but the memory of that afternoon stayed with me. I found myself thinking about the old man and the girl often. It was hard to forget the transformation I'd witnessed in such a short amount of time. I couldn't help but wonder if the girl ever went back to visit him, if she ever found the courage to reach out more often to others, to make up for the harsh words she'd once spoken. One day, as I walked into the cafe, I was surprised to see the elderly man sitting by the window again, a warm cup of tea in front of him. His usual quiet presence filled the room. But this time, there was something different. He wasn't alone. The girl, now dressed more casually, but still with a touch of elegance, was sitting across from him, talking animatedly, her hands gesturing as she laughed. They seemed completely at ease with each other, like two old friends catching up after years apart. I couldn't help but smile as I watched them. The old man's face was alive with energy, his eyes twinkling as he listened to her, clearly enjoying her company. Curiosity got the best of me, and I walked up to their table, not wanting to interrupt, but feeling the need to express my gratitude. "Excuse me," I said softly. The girl looked up at me, her smile bright and sincere. "Oh, hi, I'm so glad to see you again." I nodded, taking a seat across from them. The old man smiled warmly. "Ah, you're the one who was there that day, aren't you? The one who saw it all." I laughed, feeling a little embarrassed. "I guess so. I've been thinking about you two ever since. It was a powerful moment." The girl's eyes softened as she glanced at the old man. "It was, wasn't it?" she said, her voice now full of kindness and understanding. "I don't think either of us will ever forget it. That day changed me." The old man nodded slowly, his hands folded over his cup. "It wasn't just the words, you know. It was the connection. Sometimes we just need someone to show us the way, to remind us that we matter, no matter how old we are or how small we feel. I felt a lump in my throat. The truth in his words struck me deeply. The girl leaned forward. I've been thinking a lot about what you said, and I'm trying to live differently now. I went back to my family and talked to them. I told them about you and how you made me realize I can be better. I don't want to hurt people like I did before. I want to make the world kinder. I could see how much her words meant, how much the old man's wisdom had affected her. It was like she had truly become a new person. The old man smiled, pride in his eyes. You already are. There was a quiet moment between the three of us, a sense of peace in the air. Then, the girl spoke again. I've been thinking about helping him more, she said, her voice strong. I don't want him to be alone. I think I've been blind to a lot of things. People like him deserve to be heard. The old man's eyes welled with tears, but he quickly wiped them away, shaking his head. You don't have to do that, child. I'm not alone anymore. I have this, and I have the memories of a life well lived. But if you want to help, just promise me you'll make your own life count too. That's all I need. I couldn't help but feel the weight of his words. In that simple cafe, I had witnessed something extraordinary. A young girl learning the true value of life, and an elderly man finding peace with his past. They had both given each other something irreplaceable: understanding. As I left the cafe, I realized that sometimes the smallest of moments can ripple out and change not just one person's life, but many. I had seen how a few words could shift everything, and how, with the right connections, even the most difficult chapters of life could be rewritten. And in the end, the old man had been right. It's never too late to change, you just have to be willing to see it. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the story and found something meaningful in it. If you did, please take a moment to like, comment, and share. It helps so much in spreading the love. And if you're not already subscribed, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss any future stories. Your support means everything to me and keeps me going. I'd love to hear your thoughts, so drop a comment below. Until next time, take care and keep believing in the power of change.